Well, hello there. This is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. The Scotch game, I play the Steinitz Variation, and if you saw my video on openingtree.com, I have literally never lost against the Scotch game with the Steinitz. So far, played 19 games, 18 wins, 1 draw, and this is my most recent game against the Scotch. So I've obviously got the black pieces, white leads with the Scotch. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, and of course now D4, the Scotch. Captures, queen to H4, Steinitz Variation, and all of it is about this attack on the E4 pawn, which comes with check. Very commonly, white will see this, develop their other knight to add an extra defender. However, we now have bishop to B4, pinning that knight. This is called the modern variation in the Steinitz. Now, the best move for white is the fairly obscure and hard to find bishop to E2. Most people won't find that. They played a second best move, which is queen to D3. Basically, I need to put more pressure on that E4 pawn. So, knight to F6. Now, white's approach here is probably just to relieve the tension by forcing trades. That's probably the best for them. Here, I'm already doing fine in the Steinitz. So the Steinitz variation is objectively not so good. White is ahead, but unless they play the single accurate move, we are now back to 0-0-0. I'm doing perfectly fine. They decide to trade off, so that's fine. They capture back. Here they push, and here I decide to cash out as well. I was a bit concerned that potentially I might sort of end up losing my queen. This is potentially a reasonably strong attack. I think that actually is the best move according to Stockfish. However, I decided let's trade out queen to E4, check with a fork of the queen. That forces the queen trade, captures, and of course that knight is still pinned. They'd unpin. I decide to take the bishop, takes, short castles, and at the end of the opening, I'm doing all right. I've castled. That's nice. That looks pretty nice. I've got a developed piece, pinning their knight to the king. Their king is kind of in a stupid position, but white has got some compensation. Firstly, they've got this advanced E pawn in a pretty good place. I've got these doubled C pawns, which are not so good, and so Stockfish calls this position 0-0-0. Now, my opponent of the white pieces does pretty well from this position on. They play really well in the middle game, and I end up in a bit of trouble. They immediately bring their F pawn forward to bolster the strong center. That's very good. I develop the bishop. They develop their bishop. I now develop my rook to the D file, aiming to pin. So, 2 pinned pieces here, but although it's pinned, I can't really do very much unless I want to trade off my pieces, and I don't really want to do that. So king slides out of the way, so they're both unpinned now. I push that pawn forward. I had a thought here of doing this, but then I sort of realized this doesn't really work. So here we go. That's a straight up mistake. One of the things that happens against these daily games or these tournament daily games is that I often get a notification of the next move when I'm just out and about. So on a train, on a bus, walking, waiting to cross a road at a set of traffic lights. And often I just think of the first sort of logical looking move on my mobile phone and I make it. This is obviously a bad move when you think about it, because they should just take and then I end up with tripled pawns. That's terrible. And I sort of noticed that immediately afterwards. So they should have taken, and that's why that's a mistake. But, white has a bit of aversion to material loss. So here, of course, bring my bishop all the way back. So a bit of a wasted move there, loss of tempo. I decide to bring my bishop back as well here, trying to sort of rotate things. And one of the things with these closed positions is the knight is potentially very, very powerful. While with white pushing their pawns forward, I'm a little bit hemmed in, like my bishop pair can't really exert its pressure. They push the pawns, again, closing off that potential move. Maybe something there, but there's no target. There's nothing for it to do. And here, again, out and about, straight up blunder. That just straight up blunders the B pawn. They take. Oh, I knew I was in some trouble. knew I was in some trouble. So rook to b8. Thought maybe there's an attack there, but white plays the right move. They push the a pawn forward to a4. Excellent move. I decide to push that pawn forward. Maybe I can advance something. However, they counterattack, and my bishop forced to the back rank, looking a little bit sad, disconnecting my rooks. Push forward again, captures, my other bishop pushed to the back rank. I am in some trouble. Look at this, very, very sad compared to white's, position, in terms of white's space advantage. Here, they should have just taken, that's a free pawn. But again, I think white was having a bit of material loss aversion, worried that there'll be a potential sort of attack down here, but that's what they should have done. Here, I basically have an attack. The bishop finally now takes. However, I now, with some of, the freeing up of these pawns, the king forced outside of defenses, I now make use of a series of pins, and this now allows me to gain back my loss advantage. So, king to this square, but another pin of the knight. There we go. And more than that, I've got two attackers. They need to do something. Now here, white should immediately just trade bishops, because then I no longer have the bishop pair. However, I think once again, they had a bit of material loss aversion. So they play bishop to d3 to defend instead. And you can see that's a blunder. And in fact, right now, we're back to 0, 0, 0. Because now what they have done is that they have just hung the f7 pawn because the knight is pinned. So bishop captures, and I reconnect these two rooks. Very, very good. And I still have two attackers on that knight. You can see Stockfish said that they really needed to push that rook over to the e-file. However, I think they were worried potentially that check will come with an attack, but of course it's all defended, so there's nothing really there. However, this material loss aversion means that they are losing tempo. Here, I'm thinking of potentially doubling up. They move the king out of the pin, so I take anyway, captures, and now pin once again two attackers on that bishop. They push a pawn. That potentially seems to make sense. However, I now decide to push this pawn because there's now a potential attack this way. They give a check. That's fine. King forward. I wanted the king to move off the back rank anyway, looking to attack my a pawn. But now rook to b6. Defender, and also the possibility of rotating this way. So they move the bishop out of the way, and you can see that's a mistake. And actually, it's a really bad mistake. Stockfish at low depth doesn't see how bad it is. This is minus 4.7, almost minus 5. And the reason for that is this bishop move has now ceded the full control of the e-file to my rook. And that basically means this king is on the wrong side of the force field. All of white's pieces are on the queen side. This rook now separates the king from all their defenders. And that now means I've got a chance of creating a mating net. So it's really interesting. Stockfish at low depth thinks it's not that bad, but it's minus 5. It's really bad. So here I give a check. Potentially bishop all the way to h4 is even better because white's king just loses ability to move. It's about creating the mating net. So king moves. Now check. King forces again. And I think here white didn't realize how much of a problem they were in. You can see they wanted to actually block to bring a defensive piece back onto the king side. I think they thought that if they could get the king back to the back rank, it's defended by their rook, and thus they'll be fine. However, that is not correct. Rook now transfers over to the F file. Now I control both these files, control that rank. The space that the king can move is getting narrower and narrower. there is a mating net about to occur. White misses it. White misses it. They just push a pawn. And now a rook forward, check. King to the back rank. That's a blunder because now there is a mate. This now cuts the king off completely to basically just to these two squares, because remember that rook is there as well. Bishop to e3, check. King has now only one square. The king is trapped on h1. And now rook to f2, and here the opponent finally realizes they're about to be mated. Here it's mate in 4, basically because white can give some spite checks. You know, they can play rook to g8, and I capture. They can then give another check and I capture. But apart from that, rook to h2 is mate, because once that happens, that square is covered by the bishop, and basically none of their pieces can prevent that. Good game, GG. The big takeaway from this game is to consider the Steinitz variation as a response to the Scotch. It's not the best move, but it is very, very winning at the beginner intermediate level. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.